Hi, my name is Dewey Hidaki, and this is my History 101 presentation to serve as a review for the end of chapter 14. So this is a map of the region we're going to be talking about. We're going to start out here with Nubia, and we're going to be moving down southward slowly to what is now modern-day Ethiopia, with minor regards to Egypt, and we're also going to be ending with some history of the Islamic states along the Red Sea coast. So, from Christian to Islamic Nubia. Early raids in Nubia. So during the mid-1000s, Egypt had to resettle Arabian nomadic people. This actually caused these people to raid early Nubia. And the Nubian kings had to be the principal defenders against these raiders. Now, while the Nubian rulers were successful in repelling the invaders, it sadly caused inner turmoil in Nubia. So basically, once they had repelled the invaders, they were stuck with who was going to rule Nubia. They all felt that they had some claim to it, as they had all contributed to the defense. This led to multiple dynastic rivalries, and eventually many of these leaders looked to Egypt for support. Now, Egypt's intervention was kind of harsh. Egypt came in, conquered Nubia, and instilled their own Christian vassal king. And actually the result of this was Nubia eventually became an Islamic kingdom like Egypt. And Nubia in 1365 actually ceased to exist at all. Which brings us to Christianity in the Eastern African Highlands. So Christianity in this area has origins in the kingdom of Axum. So Axum had lost Yemen early on to the Sassanid Persians. And this actually caused Axum to shrivel to a chiefdom. While they did shrivel in size, they weren't able to continue their mission they had started with the Coptic Church, which was to move further south and convert more people to Christianity. So the continued efforts of Axum were only available because Axum survived through better agrarian resources, trade, and even slave trade. So they put all these resources into the mission that we'd spoken about just before, which was pushing further into the Southern Highlands in the hopes of converting and pacifying more people to Christianity. This would lead to a larger Axum kingdom and allow them to gain more power in the area. So, Axum did meet resistance. The key person was in 970, a mysterious queen named Gudit or Judith actually pushed back against the Axumites in a very brutal and destructive campaign of war. She was known to actually burn down entire churches, enslave the Axumites. Very brutal, as you might have if you're coming through and trying to convert an entire people. So the chaos caused by this was so severe that actually it prevented Alexandria from appointing their customary bishop from Egypt. And Gudit or Judith actually reigned for about 50 years. After her time, Axum did survive, but their power was greatly diminished. They had minimal control over anything, and they survived for about another century, but while we do have records of who ruled during the time, we have no records of what they did during this time. So for all intents and purposes, after the reign of Gudit, Axum was, for all intents and purposes, gone. So enter the Zagwe dynasty. So the Zagwe dynasty saw a return to political stability. They took over in 1137, and they were centered on a Christian province, also known as Ethiopia or Abyssinia. The Zagwe kings continued to keep a strong connection to the Christian church as the Axumites had done. Early on in the Zagwe dynasty, they attempted to split away from Egypt. They did this by trying to put together a stronger representation through the church and such, in order to get greater numbers to eventually get a vote of independence. While they were successful in starting early talks with Egypt and Syria about this, Egypt eventually just said no. Egypt didn't want to give up even indirect control in the area. They didn't want to lose political resources. So, besides that, the Zagwe did continue the traditions of Christian conversion. So they continued to move south into the highlands and convert people. But what they did differently was they actually incorporated northern Christian settlers into their kingdom. Now, the benefit of this was the northerners brought with them farming innovations such as the plow and cereal agriculture. These innovations, mixed with the rich soil from the south, allowed Ethiopia to become one of the richest agricultural nations in sub-Saharan Africa. The Solomonid dynasty came in next. So they were a new dynasty that came from 300 miles south of Axum in what is now the modern-day capital of Ethiopia. They solidified their rule by claiming ancestry to ancient Axum kings. This was important because as Ethiopia's entire history was founded on Christianity, the Axums were the original pursuers of that, and so any connection to that just strengthened your rule. So Ethiopian Christians and coastal Muslims. The rule of Ethiopia. Ethiopia maintained power through provincial lords, but what they were not able to do, they made up for with having a sizable mercenary army. So basically, the provincial lords did most, but then when things would break out that they weren't able to control, Ethiopia was able to kind of put the fist down and send in military. So King Amda Sion is actually a very important figure from this time. He's the subject of a book called The Glorious Victories of Amda Sion, and his major contribution to this time was he essentially doubled the kingdom's territory. Muslim sultanates along the Red Sea coast. So, the Muslim sultanates were responsible for keeping a Muslim presence in the area. They were also responsible, because of this, small wars were fought between them and Ethiopia. As you can imagine, Christianity and Islam have not historically gotten along well. Ethiopia and the Sultanate. So, Ethiopia came in conflict with Muslim sultanates, but they really couldn't hold out forever. While they did have stronger resources, they still relied on trade from the sultanates, and war does take up resources. Eventually, Ethiopia had to, after giving, exception to traders and stuff, they kind of realized we can't give exception here and then fight here. They eventually just gave in and accepted the people, which led Ethiopia to be one of the first multi-states, multi-ethnic, multi-religious, multilingual. It was very impressive for the time. That being said, while they were accepting of these new Muslims, they still held a very strong Christian identity. As I've said before, the entire kingdom, their entire thing, was based off Christianity. It was all based towards moving south and instilling these values in order to rule. So Ethiopia very much kept its Christian identity. They actually adopted a new set of laws called the Law of Kings, which was a repurposed set of laws from the Egyptian Coptic Church. One of the notable things was that it gave self-rule to Christians with the exception of their kings. So this just solidified Christianity as above other religions in the area. And of course, Christian kings would have province over Christian people. The Law of Kings actually stayed in until 1930. So only recently did it go away. And with that, as Ethiopia was the strongest presence of Christianity, arguably, in Africa, that came with them wanting to contact Western Christians, the Romans and such. So their main reason for wanting to do this is, of course, they wanted resources and hopefully help from the church to send and strengthen their empire, which they did get. The West did send craftspeople and the like to help. What was big about this is the West was actually very eager to work with Ethiopia because they had earlier sought help from Christian Indians to try and retake the Holy Land, which is Jerusalem, which at this time Christians had lost. So their contact with India had not bared much fruit, so they were hoping to be able to get better results from actually working with Ethiopia, and their partnership began out of that. This has been my History 101 presentation. I hope it was helpful and that you learned something. Thank you.